Good afternoon, everyone. I'm from San Antonio, and I'm just grateful for the opportunity to share our experiences and what we've been doing at the dental school, or School of Dentistry in San Antonio. And I want to thank ExamSoft for giving me that opportunity, and thank you for taking your time out to listen to this. I realize that it is June, and while summer is a nice time for students to relax, it is not necessarily the same time for faculty, especially as we gear up towards fall coming up, and especially if your school is about to start using ExamSoft and implementing that. I hope this webinar will be helpful, and I also want to offer my email if you would like to, if you have any questions after the webinar as well. I know that a lot of schools have different individual situations and circumstances where their implementation might be slightly different, and I'd be really happy to share some of the thoughts that I have and some of the experiences that I have as well. So anyway, that's what I want to talk about today, and kind of in the viewpoint of having a faculty take charge of implementing ExamSoft as well. So today I want to talk about our story, how we got started with ExamSoft, how I got started with ExamSoft, as well as my current role there. Some basic key results. We are actually just 2 years out. We just finished our second year of using ExamSoft, the first year being a transitional year and kind of a testing year for most people. And then I want to talk a little bit about the advantages and the challenges of using ExamSoft that we've come to experience, and how that kind of led to some issues with academic misconduct, what we've discovered about that, as well as talk about some of the best practices in implementing ExamSoft and using ExamSoft, and also briefly about the advantages of faculty implementation. And finally, I'd like to kind of look back and share my wish list. I wish this would have happened, or I wish we did that first, as well as what we're looking forward to as we progress on with our relationship with ExamSoft and our use of that. So this is a very nice picture of our now old dental school, because we are currently in this month in the midst of moving into a new clinical building called the Center for Oral Health and Research. And it consists of all the latest tech, the latest equipment, chairs, new furniture, everything that we're trying to really upgrade and to bring into the 21st century. And our dental school basically has about 400 students, a little bit more than that. We always say that we were ranked #1 as a dental school when it was last ranked, which was umpteen years ago, but we still have the privilege of saying that. Anyway, we are one of the first 5 dental schools with an electronic curriculum and laptop support. So in a sense, we're very innovative. We're very progressive, as you can see with our new building. And yet, a lot of that innovation is also a little bit superficial, because there's this tension that we feel between being progressive and innovative versus the fear of technology. And our dental school, the average age of the faculty here is 55, which is very high. And even within our health science center, I believe that is the highest average age in amongst the 5 schools that we have. So we face this this conflict that we have, and I'm sure many of the schools face that as well. So that kind of factors into some of the how we implemented things and how some of the difficulties that we found. So as I said, we started with ExamSoft. Basically this whole genesis happened 2 years ago in 2013, and the main reason this happened was because of the cessation of Scantron support. Basically, over the last 15 years, as far as I know, there's been budget cuts from the state and on, and every school has been struggling with the recession. Well, that kind of cut into some of the support that we were going to receive with Scantron. We actually had an office where you gave them the Scantron sheets, and they would kind of do everything for you and spit out the reports. But that support was going away. And on top of that, our Scantron machines were very, very aged. And in fact, if I remember correctly, it was going to cost like $50,000 to repair or something like that. And so, our administration started to look at other ways of testing students and what alternatives there were. And one of the things that we were using a lot of was Blackboard. Everybody was using Blackboard as the learning management system. And some of the faculty were using Respondent's Lockdown Browser as a means of doing quizzes. However, because of that experience, we've come to notice two main shortcomings for us that really wouldn't work in our school. And the first one is that basically only about 70 students were able to use this at a time, especially when you finish the quiz or exam and you try to upload. So there was a bandwidth issue, and as I said, we are about 400 students, so we have at least 100 students per class, and if there were more than one class taking the exam at once, I mean, this just would have been prohibitive. In addition, we came across some insecurity of that system. One of our prior dental students was, I guess, had a computer science degree, and he created a little program that actually took an image of the screen at whatever interval, once a minute or whatever. And he didn't do it maliciously. Basically, he did it to show how insecure this system was, and he presented it to our administration. So that's how we came to know about that. And so we were a little concerned about using this system, especially for high-stakes exams. In addition, our nursing school had been using ExamSoft, I believe, for 2 years already. So they're already 4 years out, and they really didn't seem to have many issues with that. They were using it well. And so that kind of encouraged us a lot. And on top of that, our medical school also started to use ExamSoft, I believe, a year before we did. So I think they started in 2012. So all of these kind of combined for us to consider it, and we were, in a sense, given a mandate of 1 year of transition, where faculty would need to kind of wean off of Scantron, and by the beginning of fall 2014, everybody was going to be on ExamSoft. Now, they didn't have to use ExamSoft. They could still use paper-based exams, but Scantron would no longer be available. So that's kind of what the mandate was. Now, for me, as far as my start in this whole process, the stars kind of aligned nicely for me. Being a faculty who mainly does research, as Stephanie had mentioned, I'm a biomedical engineer in a dental school. It's kind of odd, but I was mainly here to do research. I do research for about 50% of my time. But in 2013, I took over 2 courses and became course director of those 2 courses. And so that kind of allowed me to participate in the initial ExamSoft webinars. And being an engineer and being somewhat computer savvy and really liking technology, I was the first to try using ExamSoft. And so I started off by giving some quizzes, and these were extra credit quizzes to acclimate the students into using this, and then ended up giving 2 exams on this initially. And I kind of had some ulterior motives here. I am kind of notorious in my school for giving very, very tough exam questions, and so I've always wanted to use quizzes to kind of help the students be better prepared for my questions, my difficult questions, and I thought this would be a great way to teach as well. So that just kind of ExamSoft allowed me to do this. And so I went ahead and did that. And because I was the first to try, I also, and I have to admit, I'm a Mac person, and I don't know if it is still true with Windows people, but Windows people that I know always criticize us by saying that we never read our manuals, and it's true. Our Mac computers don't come with manuals, and as such, I didn't really read all of the manuals that ExamSoft provided, and so I went in and made a whole bunch of mistakes. My first quiz, I believe, I posted it without a password, so a couple students actually went in and took the quiz immediately. So I had to kind of retract that and post a different quiz. just made a whole bunch of dumb mistakes, and but I quickly learned, and by making all those mistakes, unfortunately they were all extra credit quizzes. I think I really got very familiar with ExamSoft and was less likely to forget things. But anyway, with that, I was asked to join an ad hoc soft test implementation committee, where we're trying to, just working together with different people from our Office of Blended Learning, who are assessment or who are educational experts, as well as the dean's office, and trying to get this going and implemented properly in the dental school. And one of our first projects was to do a training session, an all-day training session at our faculty development day, which was in October of that year. And so originally, we met to discuss what should the faculty learn, what should we try to do the first hour and so forth, and coming up with this schedule. And I was there really just to help out. Unfortunately, this happened where we had a room full of faculty as well as some administrative assistants who were also tasked to learn to use ExamSoft. And we started off by asking people to log into examsoft.com. And I can tell you that became a tremendously arduous process where we were spending so much time just trying to get people logged on that we decided, I asked that maybe we should split the class into two. It was clear that there were half the class was not very computer savvy, and the other were, further along. So we separated the class into two, and so I took on the class where people were already logged on, and the others were helping people trying to log on and get their passwords reset and all of that. And so it became two separate classes there, and I became an instructor during that development day. And then after that, I began helping faculty and staff people asking me for some help, and the dean's office asked if I would be of help to people when they needed my help, and so I said sure. And it was just kind of, whatever I could do, I'd help. If they had some issues, I'd just kind of set up a time and go help them. But it soon became a fairly large task. And in the second semester of that academic year, so spring of 2014, especially when the exam times were coming out, midterms and finals, I spent about a total of about 60 hours that semester running to people's exams, troubleshooting, helping people, training people one-on-one, and so forth. And so because of that, the dean's office asked me if I would become the quote-unquote go-to person. There was no special official title, no official position. It was just, would I take charge of this? And so I agreed to do that. That's kind of how I got started in this whole thing. So now, in a more kind of semi-official role in the fall of 2014, I started to have faculty training sessions. Actually, this was more during the summers before the school started. I had a series of about, I think, 3 or 4 workshops that I gave in different stages where people would learn how to input questions, and then post-exams, how to look at the analytics, and well, there wasn't a whole lot of analytics at that time, but how to release the scores, how to change grades, and things like that. And in the fall, when the students arrived, I started giving student training sessions during their orientation meetings. And that didn't really have to take long, anywhere from 30 minutes or so, just to get them familiar with how to use soft tests and what the functions were on the programs themselves. And I'd give a mock quiz. And one of the questions, of course, I had to give a multiple choice with ample pictures, one picture for every answer choice, where they had to choose the screen or the answer choice with the green check mark. Apparently, for whatever reason, I found that the 3 words green check mark is, or was that 2 words, is not that easy to understand. And many students were coming down without the green check mark, so kind of wanted to make sure the students knew that they needed to get all the way to that stage before they could be sure that their exams were uploaded. And then after that, because not all the faculty attended the training sessions, I ended up doing a lot of one-on-one training and sometimes repeat training, and that was fine. And one thing I also focused on was training administrative assistants. And unfortunately, quite a few faculty members decided that they wanted to hand that task over to the administrative assistants, and so they were tasked to do that. So it actually was good in the sense that now I had someone I could train who could then do this for a handful of faculty, and so it'll be like a lot of delegation of the tasks, so that was really good. And then I also attended exams when asked. People could schedule that with me, and what I would do is go for usually for the first 15 minutes and come back for the last 15 minutes, because that tended to be where a lot of issues would happen, whether it was trying to start the exam, computers crashing or freezing, and then also upload issues, and sometimes we even had to do some manual uploads, so those kind of things that I helped with, so I'd kind of run in and run out. And then then I realized because of all of these issues, it turns out that our younger generation may be great with using technology. They know a whole lot more about Facebook and things like that than I do. However, when it came to maintaining the computers, I realized about 99% of them had no idea what that was. And because of that, a lot of the computers were not well maintained, and whether it was viruses in there or other kind of malware, adware. On top of that, there are certain things that you need to do to maintain your computers to be at tip-top shape, and they weren't doing any of those. And in fact, most of them weren't even backing up, even though their computer package included a hard drive. So we started having these monthly computer maintenance sessions that were mandatory, where they had to come, sign in, and I would force them to go through this maintenance so that we wouldn't have any problems, or we would reduce the number of problems that we would have during the exams. And that definitely helped. So we have been doing that. Another thing that I kind of took on, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later on, but is the enhancement of ExamSoft use. And it's not, this is not necessarily being an advocate for ExamSoft, but it's more about using more of the functions that ExamSoft provides rather than just simply using this as a test replacement, which, by the way, was why we started off using it. Basically, the administration just needed a replacement, a Scantron replacement, which was quite unfortunate, and I think a little bit short-sighted, because if we had a better appreciation for all the different functions and the analytics that ExamSoft provides, I think, and we're still early on, thank God for that, but I think we could be further along as far as how we use this to enhance student learning. But anyway, so that's something that I kind of, as I started using ExamSoft, as I started to understand the functions better, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but as I started to learn more about what education is and how better I can do it, it kind of became a personal agenda of mine to enhance the use of different functions and the different types of questions in ExamSoft. And while I was doing all this, we came across many different situations. I mean, it is obviously a different procedure of giving an exam compared to paper exams. And so we came up with best practices and exam policy, which actually became broader and broader and covered things like academic misconduct and how to check for that and what to look for, and things like that. And finally, as I said, we do have a laptop program, and it was actually handled by someone else, and I became more integrally a part of that program. And because computer issues were so closely tied with this with ExamSoft, and just making sure that I knew what was going on with the laptop program, and they knew what was going on with the ExamSoft. So if somebody came to them for help, then they would be able to help them as well. So quickly, just some key results institutionally. Well, we started off, and we just finished our second year, and we've already had more than 450 assessments given within the 2-year period, and more than 60% of the classes have used ExamSoft and SoftTest, and that's pretty amazing, I think, and partly because we were kind of, forced to do it. Now, please note that many of these classes actually are also clinical classes, so not all of them will use ExamSoft, and that's fine. And we do have, I think, one class where they still give paper exams, and it's hand graded. And on top of that, we do have a couple of courses where it's they're essay questions, and so those are also still hand graded as well, even though we do have a very nice essay function in ExamSoft. The other thing that has happened is over the 2 years, the level of anxiety that the student and faculty have about ExamSoft has decreased steadily. In the beginning, students were panicking a lot about whether their exam was going to be okay. I mean, when their computers freeze, they really kind of jarred them a lot. I mean, they're about to take a major test, and that really wasn't very helpful. But by having someone there during the exam, that they realized that, oh, this person can help me when that happens, it really helped. So having a go-to person in the beginning of the exam really helps a lot. And everybody's getting more used to it. And now some of the students are beginning to troubleshoot themselves, which is great. So that's been good. I mentioned the support staff, especially the administrative assistants, have been doing a wonderful job in our university, and really taking on this task despite not being a part of their training, and putting in questions, posting assessments, even being at the exam and quizzes to do some minor troubleshooting. And if they came across something that they weren't familiar with, they would just call me, and whenever possible, just run over and try to help them. This best practices and exam policy that we've developed has been, I think, very helpful. It actually has brought to light and to our attention different things that we needed to look for that we've kind of forgotten and not been careful with, especially with academic misconduct, just kind of things like that. And even, things like having the right number of proctors and things like that, those just kind of were brought back into light, and we've become a little bit more aware of it. I guess we've been getting a little bit complacent with that. We've also, as I said, the understanding and control of academic misconduct has gone up. And just an understanding of using the assessments as an educational tool rather than an evaluation tool or just an evaluation tool has been increasing as well. And we've already started using some of the analytics for institutional reporting, especially with our competencies. And so we're beginning to use some of that. Personally, there are some key results for myself. The first thing is that I really got whooped into shape, academic shape, that is. As I said, I'm really mainly supposed to be doing research. And so until I took over the courses, I only had a few lectures. It was kind of not a high priority for me. And I think a lot of different institutions will have faculty members whose main priority is not teaching, and yet they kind of either have to teach or they teach. And because of that, I've heard this over and over again, where people say, we were taught on the content. We're experts of the content, but a lot of us may not be experts on teaching, and certainly fewer are even experts on assessment. And so for me, I really learned a lot, and about education, teaching, and it's been great for me. Just the role of assessments for me, I've been fortunate in that just when I took over this role, I was also placed on the committee, our Quality Enhancement Plan subcommittee for the university, which is looking at how to enhance education in the Health Science Center. And so I became more and more exposed to this. I've had the opportunity to go to 2 educational conferences already, which is 2 that I've never done before. And so that's really opened my eyes to a lot of different things. Especially with the use of big data and the analytics to advance education. I've really been impressed with what's been done in the field, and look forward to trying to implement this as much as possible in my courses. Learned a lot about academic misconduct, especially I have 2 kids in high school. One just graduated yesterday, 2 days ago. But so I'm talking to them about all of this and seeing what they know from their school really educated me a lot about that. And I've improved certain things, especially learning outcomes, the statements, and how to match those to the assessment questions to better assess whether they learned what I want them to learn, whether they understand what I want them to learn, and things like that. Something that I had not known before. So this is just an example of just one of my lectures where I had 6 very broad learning objectives. And after going through this whole process and seeing what ExamSoft can do with tagging questions and being convinced of that, I rewrote all of these and made them into learning outcomes that are much more specific and directly tied to questions. And this is just 7 out of 16 learning outcomes for one lecture. The students can know exactly what they need to study, what is really important from the lecture. I also learned a lot about exam questions. I guess never really thought about how good my exam questions were, except when they had typos. But looking at the analytics, looking at point by serial, things like that, I've come to put a little bit more attention on that. Going back through my questions to see if they were clear, if they were really asking questions, if they were asking one topic versus several sometimes. I have other instructors on my course, and I actually now go through their questions and we discuss how to improve the questions as well, so it's clear, so we don't have any answer choices that are really irrelevant and get 0 responses, things like that. And so I've really learned a lot about exam questions, as well as the diversity of the question type. When we were using Scantron, I mean, basically it was just one answer, multiple choice, and that's all we thought about. But with ExamSoft and all the other options that are available, I've started to diversify the number of the types of questions that I use, and really to better assess whether the students really know what they're answering or not. And I'm in a sense a little bit disappointed at the same time, because previously just with straight multiple choice we'd get very high averages, in the 80s. They're still moaning about how difficult my questions are, but the averages are in the 80s. And after I started changing this up, the averages actually dropped about 10%. I'm getting a better understanding of what they might not have understood, what I might not have taught very well or have not been very clear on, things like that. And that's been really helping me a lot. And then I've also improved the, again, how well I assess student learning, and also been improving my feedback to the students. Previously, it was just you got your grade and that was it. And if 1 or 2 students wanted to come in and take a look at the exam, fine, they can come in. They go into a room and they have 10, 20 minutes, sit down, and they just go through it. And if they had a challenge to a question, they'd come to us. But that was it. But now I get to see it immediately. I get to send feedback to the students, especially when I tag the questions. And the students have found that really helpful. So this is just kind of some examples of how we improve the feedback. And you can see, first thing we did was we tagged our questions to the competencies. We have 3 dental school competencies that we tagged the questions to. And this particular student had an average of 75, slightly better than the average score. And basically they'll see where they are. The star shows where their score is. The grayed out area is the range of scores, and the blue diamond is the average and mean. And they can see whether they were better or worse than the average. And you can see, we had 36 questions were tagged with competency number 21. 27 was tagged with competency 22, and so forth. However, there was a problem with this, and one problem was that in my course, virtually every question was tagged to these 3 competencies, because it's a very narrow topic, it's biomaterials. So it didn't really help me in seeing where they were weak. And this is why I decided to explore more about categories that function and learning objectives, and how I can tag my questions better to assess student learning. And so the first thing I did was then tag those questions with subjects. And so these were the subjects that were taught for that particular exam. So materials were on amalgam, base metals and porcelain fused to metal alloys, casting investments, gypsum, metals and alloys, and mobile casting. These are subject areas that were given, and actually those are the titles of every lecture that were given and that were assessed in this test. And that kind of helped. And I guess my goal for future is to make these specific topics available to the rest of the dental school so that they can all tag their questions with these topics so that we can assess between classes, between years, throughout, and in a longitudinal fashion whether they're mastering these materials or not. I've also tagged them based on instructor. We have 3 instructors in the course, and you can see that Dr. Norling's questions, this student got all of them right. It was only one, but got all of them right, and the average on that score was very high. Then Dr. Rawls was in the middle, and mine is the lowest, as you can see. And you can see that different instructors give give questions at different levels of difficulty, and that kind of helps in your assessment of how the student is doing as well. And then I moved on, and I tagged all of my lectures with learning outcomes and tag those to the questions as well, so that now I can see where they struggle. This particular student really struggled with learning objective 4, and please keep in mind that this is the first year that I've done this, so I only have like 1 or 2 questions for every learning objective, and I'm hoping that obviously as time goes by we'll have more and more questions on that, and the statistics will be more valid and significant. But anyway. Now, as I release this report to the students, they're able to quickly see where they were weak, what they did not understand, which question they got wrong. In fact, my learning outcomes and my questions are so tightly connected that I don't have to release my questions to the students. They should be able to tell which question they got wrong by just looking at the learning objectives. And this actually was a selling point to some of the faculty. There are faculty who do not change their questions year after year. And so because of that, they don't release the questions. And they have a difficult time letting students come and review the questions or discuss the questions with them. Some don't even let them do that. But this way, they can at least release the learning outcomes. And that kind of really attracted some of the faculty to consider rewriting their learning outcomes and consider tagging the questions as well. And finally, for me, a key result was increased contact time with students. And unfortunately, I think I have come across very few situations where that was not an advantage. And in fact, may have been a complaint that there were too many students were coming to talk to them about exams. Well, I've noticed that because I'm able to release their scores, or at least show them the scores immediately after the test, it really gets them to come in and take a look at their exam. Previously, I might have had 3 or 4 students come and take a look at their exams. Now, after using ExamSoft, I have more like 20. And they're coming in, they want to see what they got wrong, and it gives me a time to pull up the report, sit down with them, and actually teach them, right there and then. Oh, you got this wrong, and this is why, and we go through why, they chose the wrong answer and why this one is the correct answer. And I use that as a teaching opportunity. And it really is great for me, especially because I only teach 2 courses, and I don't get a lot of contact time with them, and this has really increased that a lot for me, and I really enjoyed that. So what are some of the advantages that we found? The first thing is towards the end of our Scantron era, I visited the Scantron facility, and I realized that there were many times when the Scantron did not scan correctly, or they were jammed, or something was wrong. There was one time it just all scanned in as all hundreds. I don't know what happened there. So I was kind of horrified. That kind of motivated me to move over to ExamSoft as soon as it was available. It allowed us to do pop quizzes. Now, some people do pop quizzes, but generally they're on a piece of paper. They got to take it in. They got to grade it. Getting timely feedback back to the students was just too difficult. And so we've always wanted to do pop quizzes, but we couldn't. Now, these are not really pop quizzes because you got to let them know to download it. But still, we're now able to do quizzes. In fact, I have short quizzes in every lecture to assess where they are, to motivate them. These are extra credit quizzes, but motivate them to be on top of the material. The use of images and documents and other multimedia files have also increased a lot too. And previously we've had courses like histology where they would show a slide and everybody answered the same question at once. Okay. Now it's all randomized, and it doesn't matter when the student sees that question, an image pops up and they can look at that. In fact, the image is of much higher quality and resolution if needed, because the slide projectors were, kind of dull, sometimes difficult to see. Also, I've had faculty who've used PDFs of physicians' best references to ask questions on drugs and interactions and things like that. So the PDF would pop up and they'd have to search through that to find answers to the question. And I've had one faculty who did a great job where she put video clips into the questions, and it was a video clip of measuring blood pressure. So you could see the mercury bounce up and down, as the pressure is going down. And as soon as they start seeing that, they can also hear the heartbeat as well. And so the question is, what is their blood pressure, and that they would need to write that. So that was a great way of using some of the features that we had, and something we couldn't do before. Another thing is the fill in the blanks was excellent. Initially, nobody wanted to use it because you have to have the exact spelling for it to be marked right. And so most of the time, the students will get back a grade immediately when you allow them to see the scores that are a little bit lower. But it turns out that when you go in to rescore or regrade, it is just so easy to correct that. All the lists of different options are up there, and you just click the ones that you think are acceptable answers, and it just rescores immediately. It is an excellent function, and I'm using that more and more in my exams. Obviously, the time to score, to rescore, to release results, which used to take days, is immediate now. Again, the increase in student interaction, better feedback, quicker feedback to the students. Also, the notes and feedback function is very important as well. It gives them a section, a place where the students can type notes for themselves, so that when they go back to the question, they remember where they left off, as well as be able to put challenge questions there as well, and then request feedback. And now we have a place where we can look at what students say. For example, oh, this question was ambiguous because of that, and that helps as well. And the analytics, and also releasing learning outcomes instead of questions have been helpful for some faculty. However, there are some challenges. As I said, our average faculty age is very high. There is an initial time investment involved. There are so many functions there that it can be daunting. And then remembering to do everything. That really, I think, is could be difficult. I think the more you use it, the easier it is. But sometimes faculty only give exams once a year or twice a year, and so when they get back to it, it's difficult to remember everything that they need to do. And that's one reason why it's nice to have a go-to person as well. Dealing with new ways to cheat, and that has to be handled. Compatibility with learning management systems. And it's not necessarily a fault of ExamSoft, but our Blackboard was not compatible in the sense that the way the students were ordered were different, and so we couldn't just export our grades directly to Blackboard, and so that really was a little bit cumbersome. Symbols is something that everybody needs to be careful of because it doesn't always show up in Windows and Macs the same way. In fact, in one of the fill-in-the-blanks or matching questions, I've had students copy and paste, and because there were symbols in there, actually it was graded as wrong. Symbols need to be careful with that. Faculty participation is always difficult, trying to get faculty to buy into this and invest the time and do that. The fear of losing exams is real. Students really do fear that. Even though we tell them it's okay, it's saved on your computer. Sometimes, what if the computer literally dies? And I've had a student that happen where they took the test, they were trying to upload, and the computer just died. And that student did not take care of the computer and other things, but there was no way to retrieve that exam, and the student actually had to take the exam on paper. So that can happen. So computer problems is probably the biggest challenge, and definitely having a go-to person who knows how to solve these computer issues is very important. Now, one of the things in our nursing center, they haven't had as many problems as this because they actually have a testing center, and all the computers there are managed in the testing center. So students do not use their laptops. They go to the testing center. The computer is very clean. It only has that assessment loaded there, and that's all they use. So it's much better controlled, and I think that's really cut down on the issues, computer issues anyway. So that's been helpful for them. Unfortunately, we're not able to do that. Now, I want to talk a little bit about academic misconduct. You can see a little picture here about the rollout cheat pen. I just Googled something and it popped up. So you can buy these things. This is obviously archaic. There are a whole bunch of other things. I mean, we had one incident where a student had a pen with a video or a camera attached to it, and they were taking pictures of every question while they were taking the test. The pen was in the breast pocket. So there's just numerous ways of cheating. I mean, obviously with the Apple Watch now and other Android watches, I mean, the sky's the limit. And so it's something that we have to be aware of. And obviously the randomized questions and answers and the ExamSoft feature really help. But students were delaying the start of the exam because they wanted to get a few more minutes to take the exam. They knew that ExamSoft gave them, whether it was 50 minutes to take the exam. So they could start later and still get the 50 minutes. They didn't have to worry about the faculty coming around and saying, okay, time's up. Okay? Some students actually, because they were using their laptops, they would come in, start copying notes from their computers, their PowerPoint notes down on sheets of paper, okay, while everybody was getting settled. Okay? And because we handed out a sheet of paper for their notes. So now we actually have to go around and individually hand each student a piece of paper after we make sure that they've started the exam. We've had incidents where when they did a quiz, I released the answers immediately for them to do a review. Well, some students took the quiz earlier, and they would text the answer to their friends who took it later. So, things like that. Even though these are randomized, people still are able to copy off other people's screens. They look at keywords in the questions and maybe the length of the answer choices, and they kind of look at that. And so, spacing is still important even if we use ExamSoft. And this is all what led to the development of our best practices in exam policy. And this document is available. If you would like a copy, I'd be more than happy to send it to you. But some of the best practices is obviously to have a go-to person. Now, preferably, this go-to person, you might need one on each floor because it makes it much more accessible. And it could be an administrative assistant. Okay? You don't have to have all of them be computer savvy, but you should have at least one person who is quite computer savvy to handle some of the new problems or more difficult ones. And I'd like to strongly recommend that one of the go-to person, at least maybe even the key person, be a faculty member, to be an advocate for using this computer testing and various functions on it. Okay? Definitely get the administrative assistants to participate, because their help is really what helps smooths out the implementation process for the faculty who don't want to do this. And the other thing is to connect with the laptop support people or the IT people that you have. They need to know about soft test and ExamSoft just as much as you need to know about their IT, because a lot of times some of the issues have to do with the internet and things like that, and constant communication will help you. If you have a problem uploading, maybe there was a problem with their internet server or whatever, or router, and you can talk with them about that. And obviously, a connection with their educational experts is very, very important. As I said, we might be content experts, but we may not be educational experts, and getting their help and how to devise tests and all of that is key. Webinars. Absolutely so helpful in advancing our understanding of how to use the analytics, as well as how to implement all of this. I mean, they have webinars every week, I think, and I'm a junkie. I listen to most of the webinars, and I've learned so much about that, about different things, and I really strongly recommend that. The phone tech support is excellent. Do not hesitate to call them. We have a special number once you log into ExamSoft, and I don't think I've ever been put on hold. And they've always, come through when I needed help immediately. And there's a community button that I use quite often. to suggest things. And when people like things that you suggest, then it kind of brings up the priority, and it really helps in future implementations of functions that you'd like to see. So I want to touch briefly on the advantages of faculty implementation. And please do not misunderstand me. I'm not saying only faculty should implement this. I'm just saying that it is crucial that one of the key go-to people, if not the key person, needs to be a member of the faculty and preferably a course director. Okay. And I just came back from the ExamSoft assessment conference. Great conference. I learned so much. I met a lot of people. And I've actually had great opportunities to meet with staff from other schools as well who lead the ExamSoft implementation. And they do many of the tasks such as inputting exam questions, posting assessments, and even tagging the questions. But the focus is actually still quite different. The difference is on the focus on student learning versus physical implementation. I mean, even the interest in webinars would be different. The uses of the analytics would be different. I mean, it would be reporting versus changes to question construction, or tracking of student progress, or improvement to learning objectives, or improvements to lectures. These are focuses that faculty would have versus a staff person who's there to help you with all this. But if the faculty does not go to that person and asks for these things, they wouldn't be helping with them. So we do need faculty, in this process to kind of make other faculty aware of what are some of the things that they could be doing with this, what are some of the things that they should be doing with this, so that they would be made motivated more to do them. And unfortunately, I found that there is a difference in how other faculty can be influenced. A staff person saying, oh, you should tag your questions, versus a faculty coming and said, you know what, I tagged these questions, I tried it in these exams, and I found that these students were weak early on, so I was able to help them, and this is the kind of improvement that I found. That makes a huge difference, because it makes it more personable to them. It makes it more applicable to them, and having a faculty member do that is also part of the grassroots implementation of this, because sometimes just top-down does not always work. Although a lot of the top-down is also necessary in getting some of the things done. Okay? So these are some of the advantages that I've found with having with faculty implementation. And so, kind of just looking back, I wish many things. I wish I were taller, stronger, whatever. I wish I had won the lottery, but those are probably not going to happen. So more importantly, there are certain things that I wish we had done first. First thing is, I wish the point person was trained first. Not through a webinar, but through hands-on workshops. I don't know if it's available, but I wish our school, we actually kind of relied on, and we thought, well, the nursing school has already used it, so we can just ask somebody from there to help us. We have the Office of Blended Learning, which is great, and they know how to use it, so we'll just ask them. And I think, hindsight, it would have been really great if we actually asked somebody from ExamSoft to come down and do a training workshop, more intensive training workshop for point people. I think that would have helped the implementation a lot. The webinars are just, when it comes to trying to do something in the beginning, when you don't know anything about the software, it's just difficult. Doing something hands-on together, I think would be much better. So if you haven't started yet in your university or in your institution, and you're about to start with ExamSoft, please ask if they could send someone to come and train people. More support would be very helpful. In our case, from the Office of Blended Learning and from an assessment expert, which we don't have. And the Office of Blended Learning, they have other duties like teaching people how to use LMSs and other things. And so this is not their job. But and they were very, very gracious in providing 6 months, and then which got extended to a full year of support for us. But it would be nice to have more support in that area. Definitely, IT and laptop services, getting more support from them early on, getting them more aware of the software as well. So if something happens with the computers, they can help troubleshoot. That would be very helpful. And training faculty on learning outcomes. Hopefully even before you start implementing this, and making it mandatory to implement learning outcomes and competencies, and tagging the questions. because after 1 or 2 years, you've already seen how many assessments and questions we have. Well, it's difficult to go back and retag everything. It just takes a lot of time, and nobody wants to do it. But if we do it from the beginning, then it's just not as much work. And I mean, I can't emphasize this, more. It is just so important to get that off going from the beginning, which something is we just did not think of doing at all, because we only looked at ExamSoft as a Scantron replacement. Now, looking forward though, the future is hopefully brighter. And I've been doing all of the tagging that I've shown you. It's been something that I've been doing by myself privately, and just to do, it's like a pilot project that I'll do in my class, and I want to present to the faculty, and I'll be doing that probably in the next month to the course directors, and how I use learning objectives and showing them some data and things like that. These are the categories, the main categories we have, and we initially started off with what's in the box, Bloom's taxonomy, and at that just 2 levels, recall and application. The dental school competencies, the dental hygiene competencies, and the ones that you see, biomaterials and the expanded Bloom's taxonomy, are mine, which is currently not visible to other faculty. And these are the competencies, some of which I've shown you already. Again, I've shown you the subjects that I've used, and hopefully more people will start using those to tag their questions. And again, these are the learning objectives, and you can see the hierarchy of that, biomaterials, adhesives, and then under amalgam, that lecture, that subject, you'll have these learning objectives. But anyway, so I'll be presenting that along with statistics on how students did and things like that. And I've just spoken with people over in our educational experts, and we will be including the use of ExamSoft, training on learning outcomes, in our teaching excellence program, which most new faculty take. So this is a great place to get them doing this right from the beginning. And I'm still trying to get our administration to make tagging questions mandatory. I really think it is crucial for us to better assess student learning and their progress. Another thing, training on improving question and assessment construction, is something that we do in the teaching excellence course, and hopefully now with ExamSoft that'll have a slightly different spin to it. And something else that I've been doing, another project that I've kind of placed on myself, was to educate and people on using rubrics in didactic courses, whether it's for group projects, evaluation, or whether it is for essay questions. Those have been very helpful, and especially through the conference, I've learned a lot about how to do that. And the other thing I've been doing was talking with clinical faculty and getting them interested in using rubrics to assess clinical performance. And I think in the near future, I think I'll be doing another webinar. Hopefully I'll be doing another webinar talking about how we did that and some of the differences, unique circumstances that our dental school might have, and how we went around that or adapted ExamSoft to those specific situations. But and I'm trying to get that used more in the clinic as well, so that faculty we can look at whether didactic learning and there's a connection between didactic learning and clinical performance, and whether we can catch weaknesses in a didactic learning that would result in weaknesses in the clinic. So those are things that I'm hoping to find or use this to find. And also, I'm talking with our curriculum management committee about forming a assessment subcommittee. Now, there are a lot of roadblocks to this. First, it's just the sheer amount of work that needs to be done by the subcommittee in looking at people's questions and giving constructional feedback. It's just a lot of work, and trying to figure out how this could be done when everybody seems to be overtaxed with other tasks. So these are some of the things that we're looking forward to. And that's all I have to share right now, and I'd like to entertain any questions if there are.
Thank you so much, Dr.